There are places in this world that geography accepts, but history tries to forget. Paths that twist into nothingness, lights that flicker where no electricity flows, and echoes that return to you with secrets not your own. You are not here by accident. Tonight, we begin not with legends, but with places you can trace on a map if you know what to look for. Places the authorities won't speak about. Places that breathe. And the first is hiding under a forest in Washington state, where stone once exhaled fire and men vanished without a trace. So turn the lights low. Take a deep breath. You are about to hear something the mountains tried to bury. In the shadow of the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest, near the quiet perimeter of Trout Lake, Washington, lies a forgotten crevice, or rather, used to. Back in the summer of 1989, 3 hikers stumbled upon something strange while navigating a forest ravine. The rocks underfoot were hot. Not warm, hot. So hot, in fact, that snow in the nearby crevices had melted into bubbling puddles. From a jagged slit in the earth, pulses of dry, sulfur-laced air hissed upward like breath from an unseen furnace. They could see the shimmer in the air, heat waves above granite. They snapped photos, marked the GPS location, and rushed back to notify a park ranger. But 2 weeks later, when they returned, nothing. The rock was cold. No heat, no hiss. Just silence. As if the land had inhaled and sealed itself shut. The Geological Survey teams dismissed it as a temporary methane release. A natural decomposition of organic matter. Harmless. But there was a problem with that explanation. There were no organic deposits there. No signs of fault lines, no recent seismic activity, and 140 degrees Fahrenheit air surging from solid granite. That was not normal. It was not even explainable. So the file was closed. Quietly, but the mountain was not finished. 3 years later, a private expedition arrived. 2 amateur spelunkers, 3 university students. They had studied the topography, mapped overlays from historical cartography, and triangulated the precise coordinates using early GPS gear. And to their shock, the crevice had returned, but now it was wider, dry, deeper. Roughly 2 feet wide at the mouth, angling down into darkness. They descended in pairs, with ropes, lights, and radio. What happened next would never be explained. Only 2 emerged. They were shaken, their eyes bloodshot. One of them was vomiting and delirious. The other had burns on his palms and the side of his face, as though exposed to radiation or caustic gas. Their radios had failed mid-descent. Lights dimmed despite fresh batteries. And deep underground, they described a sensation, like pressure building behind their eardrums. The stone was not just warm, it was breathing again, pulsing almost, like an exhale from the earth itself. The last 3 members, they never made it out. Rescue teams arrived hours later, but no signs of gear or bodies were found. As if the earth had swallowed them whole. 2 weeks after the incident, heavy rain triggered a landslide, sealing the crevice entirely. No further investigation was pursued. Officially, it was erosion. Nature doing what it always does. Unofficially, something stranger happened. Within 48 hours of the hikers' disappearance, military satellites were quietly repositioned over the area. Internal emails leaked years later suggested containment protocols and priority silence. One unnamed source from the Forest Service revealed that all personnel had been instructed not to speak to the media. No agency ever claimed jurisdiction. No answers were given. And slowly, the story faded. The trail leading to the crevice disappeared into overgrowth. Park maps removed any reference. The forest, like a wound scabbing over, concealed what lay beneath. But not everything stays buried. In 1996, hikers reported strange scorch patterns on trees nearby, bark discoloration and ring damage, consistent with heat exposure. Some biologists claimed it resembled radiation burns, but again, no follow-up. In 2003, one of the surviving spelunkers died from an aggressive form of lymphoma. He was only in his 30s. The other survivor refused interviews for the rest of his life. His final public words were brief. "There is something beneath that rock. And it breathes." Could a cave truly breathe fire? On the surface, no, unless you abandon traditional geology. The temperature spike they described is not consistent with any known fumarole or geothermal vent, especially given the region is far from any known volcanic zone. It is too far north for Mount St. Helens' influence, and outside the seismic radius of Rainier. One theory suggests a pocket of compressed gas, not methane, but perhaps radon or another volatile trapped under pressure. But that does not explain the missing bodies, or the fact that no gas source has ever been found. Another theory, whispered in more esoteric circles, posits that the cave lies on a tectonic thin place, a spot where dimensions or magnetic resonances thin the veil between realities. Similar theories surround Dyatlov Pass in Russia and the ancient breathing caves of Mexico, where locals describe winds that think, and the military's swift silence. That is not typical for geology. That is typical for something they were not supposed to see. The mystery of the breathing cave eerily mirrors phenomena reported in places like the Siberian Batagayka crater, a massive megaslump that expands yearly and has its own inexplicable hump, or the ancient tales from Iceland's lava tubes, said to be breathing gateways to hidden underworlds. More recently, the Darvaza gas crater in Turkmenistan, a burning pit known as the Door to Hell, ignited mysteriously in 1971 and has never stopped burning, but even that flame has a known cause. This one does not, and therein lies the terror, not that we understand too little, but that something understands us and does not want to be found. A crevice that screamed without a voice, heat with no source, a trail with no map. But just 400 meters south, in the dry air of the Arizona desert, another place appears. Only from the sky, a town no one can walk to, one that shows up on radar but vanishes in daylight. Next, we travel to the Phantom Town, because some places do not need doors to trap you. They just need you to believe they are real. What if a town existed that you could never visit but your airplane could see it? What if satellites confirmed its heat, its layout, even its roads? But when boots hit the sand, there was nothing. Just wind. Just silence. Just... In the sun-scorched expanse of Arizona's Sonoran Desert lies a mystery so strange it does not even try to hide. It only asks you to stop looking. This is not a mirage. This is not folklore. This is a ghost town made of radar. April 1972. A military training jet lifted off from Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, Arizona. The skies were clear. The route was standard. But as the pilot crossed over a stretch of desert northwest of Tucson, the onboard radar screamed something unusual. Movement grids, reflections, rectangular returns, in short, signs of a functioning town. Heat pockets, roads, vehicle activity. All the data you would expect from flying over Phoenix, not empty desert. But when the pilot looked down, nothing. No buildings, no rooftops, no signs of life. He circled back. Still nothing. And when he returned to base, the radar tapes were flagged and filed under anomalous reading. As decades passed, the strange radar readings continued, and not just from military sources. In the early 2000s, commercial pilots began filing unofficial reports. Some saw movement on instruments, others recorded full maps that suggested man-made structures, buildings, blocks, even roads. But every time they tried to cross-check visually, the desert remained the same, flat, lifeless, undisturbed. In 2003, the FAA dispatched a small private team to investigate. They used mobile radar trucks, thermal scanners, and satellite overlays across 3 nights. The results? Consistent, repetitive, impossible. Same grid-aligned patterns, same symmetrical pulse returns, same geometric formations, and yet still no trace on the ground. They labeled it Phantom Return Anomaly. Unofficially, the engineers called it the city that does not want you to land. In July 2011, a thermal satellite operated by a private tech firm captured something extraordinary. A heat signature over the exact anomaly coordinates showed signs of life, rectangular plots glowing with internal heat similar to occupied homes. Heat-absorbing roads, elevated temperature zones. It looked alive, but when the satellite passed again 24 hours later, it was gone. The heat signature vanished without a trace. And 1 week later, The coordinates were erased from the public database. No announcement, no clarification, just digital deletion, as if the desert had changed its mind. But to the indigenous Tohono O'odham people, the anomaly is not new. Their oral histories speak of a sun-scorched village, a place where time failed to pass and memory was stolen, a cursed settlement that the sky turned its back on. In these stories, the land itself did not bury the people, memory did. They warn never to walk through that zone at night, not because something is there, but because it might not let you leave the same. One plausible theory came to light in 2017, when a retired aerospace engineer speaking anonymously gave an interview to a fringe publication. He claimed to have worked on radar deception systems during the 1980s. These systems, designed for Cold War-era psyops, used electromagnetic mirroring to simulate fake towns or vehicles' ghost cities on enemy radar. When asked directly if the phantom town was one of theirs, he paused. Ours were messy. Too much noise. Too many signatures. This one's clean. Too clean. He believed it was not natural, but he also did not think it was ours. The idea of phantom towns is not new. In China, developers have built entire cities that sit abandoned, complete with roads, buildings, and lights, but no people. A real-life ghost town. But what makes Arizona's anomaly so chilling is that it is the opposite, visible only to machines. The human eye sees nothing. The ground holds no sign. But radar finds life. Some physicists have speculated that under extremely rare electromagnetic conditions, reflections from distant cities could bounce across layers of the ionosphere and appear miles away. Others suggest that we are seeing a dimensional echo, a sort of residual imprint from a forgotten timeline or parallel layer of space. If that sounds absurd, consider this. In quantum theory, particles can exist in superposition, existing in multiple states at once. Could a location do the same? Could a town exist in two realities, one where it was lost and one where it is still active? From a psychological or spiritual perspective, the phantom town is an eerie metaphor. It represents the parts of our past that remain visible in instruments, photos, memories, journals, but are unreachable in real life, like a friendship that exists only in screenshots. Or a hometown that changed after war, gentrification, or time. We see it on the radar of memory. But when we go back, it is gone. We are left chasing ghosts, made of heat and light, a city that exists only to machines, a story erased from both ground and sky. But some mysteries do not vanish. They hum. They pulse. They drag people into silence. Next, we travel to Nevada, to a sinkhole that sings, a pit that never echoes, a place where even the trees forget how to whisper. Some disappearances do not happen in cities or crowds. They happen in silence, in vast open spaces where the land has no need for roads and no room for memory. In Nevada's remote Ely region, there is a whisper that something in the ground does not just pull people in, it erases them. No scream, no signal, just a hum, and by the time you realize it is calling, you are already gone. In the fall of 1938, a lone prospector named George Winter wandered the rocky hills northeast of Ely. His journal, later recovered from an abandoned shack, describes a strange find, a perfectly round hole, about 12 feet across, hidden in the brush. The air above it shimmered faintly, the scent, like rusted copper. And then the sound, a whistle, he wrote. Like steam, but colder. Winter dropped a stone inside. He never heard it hit the bottom. Days later, he vanished. Searchers found his shack unlocked. Inside, his final note was smeared and barely legible. But one line stood out. Don't let the wind fool you. It is not wind. His body was never found. 14 years later, in July 1952, two high school students, Tommy Blake and Eric Danners, hiked into the same area Winter described. They were never seen again. A week-long search turned up only footprints, leading straight toward a depression in the earth and then stopping. No signs of struggle. No broken branches. Just the tracks. And then nothing. Aerial scans captured a circular depression, exactly matching Winter's description, but when ground crews arrived, the pit was gone, replaced by undisturbed dirt. No collapse. No sinkhole. Like it had simply decided to close. Fast forward to 1978, a Bureau of Land Management (BLM) team was conducting mineral surveys near Ely when one of their seismic sensors picked up a low, rhythmic vibration. The pattern was strange, a low-frequency hum, rising and falling every 11 minutes. It resembled a machine idling beneath a sheet of metal. But there were no machines, no fault lines, no tectonic activity, just sound, coming from nowhere. The reading lasted 36 hours. Then silence. The anomaly was marked non-reproducible environmental phenomenon. In other words, we do not know. Move on. But in 2009, the pit came back. A group of amateur drone operators and cavers, part of an online paranormal collective, used George Winter's journal, old aerial maps, and satellite overlays to triangulate what they believed was the original pit site. They found a depression, mostly hidden by thyme and brush. This time, they were prepared. They dropped cameras, ropes, a drone, and signal equipment into the shaft. Within 30 minutes, everything stopped working. Cameras shut off. Radios died. One team member collapsed with nausea and vertigo. That same night, a blackout swept the nearby region. A blackout that lasted exactly 36 minutes. The same duration as the hum recorded 31 years earlier. Coincidence? No explanation was ever offered. Since 2010, the area has been fenced off and marked as geologically unstable. But curious observers using thermal satellite imaging noticed something odd. The terrain shifts slightly every 18 months. Faint concentric depressions form in the same pattern visible only in heat scans. It is as if the ground breathes. Slowly, locals say the animals know. Cattle refuse to graze near it. Birds avoid the airspace. And if you step too close, something eerie happens. The world goes quiet. Trees stop rustling. Bugs vanish. Even the wind dies down. All you are left with is pressure in your ears, like something below is listening. There is something deeply primal about a hole in the earth. It is more than fear of falling, it is fear of being swallowed. The Ely Pit is not just a disappearance site. It is an emotional archetype, the void that watches back. In ancient cultures, pits were more than geography, they were portals. Traps for evil spirits, gateways to the underworld. And in this case, maybe something still lingers beneath, something that waits, that listens, that opens only when it wants to feed. The Ely Pit evokes other chilling geological mysteries. Mel's Hole, the infamous bottomless pit from Washington state, which inspired coast-to-coast AM callers for years. The Potomsky Crater in Siberia, a bizarre mound that radiates geological noise and heat for no reason. And the Humboldt Sink in Nevada, another desert pit surrounded by legends of people vanishing without a trace. In each case, the earth does not collapse violently. It invites you. Then removes the evidence. It is easy to assume this is a wild tale. But why block access? Why deploy fencing? Why monitor with thermal satellites? And more chilling, why do federal databases list the zone as inactive when private geologists report magnetic irregularities and shifting strata? One answer: it is easier to deny a danger than admit you can't explain it. A whistle in the dark. A hum that pulses like a countdown. And a hole that unearths nothing but fear. But in the cold forests of northern Minnesota, there is a different kind of silence. One that does not hum, it screams. A lake that cries out through the ice. And if you listen too long, you will wish you had not. Cold can preserve. It slows time, quiets decay, and seals secrets beneath a layer of silence. But not everything wants to stay hidden. In the wilderness of northern Minnesota, there is a frozen lake that does not whisper, it screams. And when the wind dies and the forest sleeps, a voice beneath the ice begins to cry. It was just past 2:40 a.m. on a January morning in 1967 when Park Ranger Edward Halverson heard the first scream. Stationed near Lake No. 14 in remote Itasca County, a place that barely appears on maps, he described the sound in his report as a female scream. Long, high-pitched, echoing beneath the ice. It did not come once. It came 3 times that night. The next evening, it returned. No signs of animals. No evidence of human presence. just the same haunting sound from under the frozen lake. Halverson's logs were detailed. He ruled out bobcats, foxes, or wolves. This was not territorial howling. It was something else. Something pleading. In the early 1970s, Halverson's report caught the attention of state wildlife biologists. They set up acoustic monitoring stations, expecting migratory animal sounds or shifting ice patterns. What they got was silence until it came again. The scream, multiple times, across different nights. The spectrogram showed something chilling, a sound pattern that mimicked human vocal cords. Frequencies matching distress cries, but it was not human. It was not any known animal either. Their final verdict: unidentified biological origin. In scientific terms, we do not know and we do not want to guess. In 1974, an independent sound engineer named Carl Denning visited the lake. He brought analog reel-to-reel recorders and camping gear, hoping to capture the scream. Over 72 hours, he recorded 5 instances. In 1976, the original cassette, Halverson's reports, and all field notes were destroyed in a fire that consumed the ranger station. The cause: faulty heating unit. Combustion. Just an accident, they said. But Halverson retired shortly after. He left no new notes, only a final message to a colleague. There is something in that lake. It watches through the ice. Despite the fire and the silence from authorities, locals kept telling stories. Campers who dared to stay nearby in winter reported the same phenomena. A sudden, unnaturally quiet, a sensation of being watched. And then, sometime after midnight, a scream. One hiker claimed it sounded like a woman sobbing underwater. Another said it made her feel like someone had been crying for centuries. And indigenous Ojibwe elders in the region have long spoken of the lake, but never by its number. They call it Siren Lake. According to Ojibwe oral tradition, there is a spirit trapped beneath frozen water. A voice denied. A wound in the land itself. It is not evil, they say, but in pain. It cries to be remembered, one elder said. But the ice does not let it go. In these stories, the spirit is not seeking escape. It is warning others not to come closer, because what lies beneath is not just trapped, it is waiting. In 2007, a university graduate student named Hannah Vinn returned to the site with modern recording equipment. Her goal was to replicate Denning's test using digital microphones and spectral software. At exactly 2:11 a.m., her device recorded a high-pitched signal peaking at over 6,000 hertz. The modulation was unnaturally tight, rhythmic, almost linguistic. There were no nearby animals. No wind. No steps on snow. Only the scream. After one night, she abandoned the project. When asked why, she responded, "The scream does not ask for help. It warns." She never returned to the site. Her thesis was left unfinished. There is something uniquely terrifying about a scream in isolation. It is the sound of presence, of consciousness, of pain without explanation. A scream under ice is even worse, because we can't reach it, we can't stop it. We can only listen, and that helplessness echoes in all of us, in forgotten trauma, in buried guilt, in things we pretend we do not remember. Siren Lake is not just a place, it is a question we can't answer. Some suggest shifting ice plates grinding to produce eerie vibrations, but acoustic experts have pointed out that these frequencies are too consistent, too shaped. Ice groans. It does not modulate like a voice. Others propose a natural sonar effect, an echo from distant animal cries bouncing through caverns beneath the lakebed. But again, no caves have been found. No known wildlife can produce the same acoustic profile. A few point toward infrasound low-frequency noise caused by electromagnetic interference, which can induce dread, hallucinations, or even hear false sounds. Still, this does not explain the scream's structure, its pattern, its message. To this day, Siren Lake is not marked as a danger zone. It is not even listed as notable, but the trail to it is always overgrown. The signs nearby have no directions, and even in the middle of summer, the lake feels. The surface is too still, the birds do not land, and every so often someone new finds their way there, seeking proof, seeking thrill, or seeking answers. but all they find is silence. Until the ice remembers, a scream beneath the ice. A voice denied release. But some places do not cry out. Some just stare. Our next destination lies deep in the Stone Ridge of Wyoming, a cliff face with no caves, but too many eyes. They blink, then vanish, and if you stare long enough, they stare back. Some places are not haunted by the dead. They are haunted by the watchers. Not spirits, not shadows, just presence. In the high desert cliffs of Wyoming, there is a place where hikers, hunters, and scientists have all returned with the same impossible claim: I was being watched by something inside the rock. These are not hallucinations, these are patterns. Patterns with pupils. In July 1991, wildlife photographer Dennis Farrow was camped near the Shoshoni Rim, a rugged, untrailed expanse of jagged cliffs in central Wyoming. He was not looking for the strange. He was documenting bighorn sheep. But just after sunset, while reviewing photos from his tent, he noticed a flicker on the cliff wall eyes. Not animal eyes. Not glowing like a predator's. Just 2 points of soft amber light. Too high for an animal. Too steady for a trick of light. And then they blinked. When he looked again, they were gone. Farrow searched for hours. No crevice. No nest. No cave. His last journal entry that night read simply, "Something new. I was watching and it watched back." Between 1992 and 2009, at least 17 separate reports were filed at local ranger stations. Different people. Different times of year. Same story. Eyes 6 to 8 feet off the ground. Staring from solid stone. Sometimes blinking. No heat signatures. No tracks nearby. And always followed by sudden dizziness, nausea, or the irresistible urge to flee. One ranger began to compile the sightings but was transferred shortly after. His report was never completed. The sightings were unofficially renamed the Staring Stones. In 2004, a group of spelunkers attempted to explore a known crevice system near the sightings. One of them, an experienced climber, saw the eyes just before descent. He collapsed mid-step. Paramedics later diagnosed him with a panic-induced blackout. He would never had anxiety before. Never returned to caving again. His own words, "They were not behind the rock. They were in it." In October 2010, a wildlife team testing night vision gear near Shoshoni Rim captured 9 seconds of stunning footage. 2 lights, perfectly still, motionless on the cliff face, then blinked in unison and disappeared. They did not reflect infrared. Didn't match any known animal eye spacing. The footage and the camera were submitted to a regional wildlife office. 3 days later, they were lost in storage. No copies remain. Official word: equipment malfunction. Unofficial word: suppression. In August 2019, veteran solo climber Rebecca Mess set off for a 3-day exploration into the Shoshoni Rim trail system. She never came out. Search teams later found her helmet and climbing gear neatly coiled beside a narrow ledge. No signs of animal activity. No blood. No tracks. Her helmet strap had been cleanly sliced. No animal could do that. 2 weeks later, the trail was permanently closed due to erosion risk. But that same night, satellite data showed a Department of the Interior drone hovering over the ridge, one designed for thermal and subsurface scanning. No data was released. In 2022, an independent geologist ran a LiDAR scan of the Shoshoni Rim cliff face. What he found shocked him. Irregular cavities behind the stone, hollow pockets where none should exist, and orb-shaped formations. Dense, magnetic anomalies clustered exactly where the sightings had occurred. When asked what they were, he simply said, "They are not natural. Something carved them from the inside out." He refused to publish his report. Why are eyes so unsettling? Because we associate them with intention, with awareness, with judgment. To see eyes is to be seen, but to see them in stone, unblinking, inhuman, immobile, is to confront the terrifying idea that the land itself may be conscious. Not metaphorically. Literally, what if the mountain is not just a witness, but a participant? The Shoshoni Rim phenomenon echoes other strange anomalies. The Marfa Lights of Texas. Unexplained glowing orbs seen since the 19th century. The Nazca Lines in Peru geoglyphs, best seen from the sky, raising questions about watchers from above. The dolmens of Korea, ancient stones that some believe align with celestial bodies not yet identified. But unlike these places, the rim does not show its patterns on the surface. It hides them. Until you are close, and then it stares back. There is a reason many cultures believe mountains had spirits. That cliffs had eyes. That stone could remember. In Greek mythology, the Argus Panoptes, the 100-eyed giant, was a guardian, an all-seeing force of vigilance. In modern times, we mock such myths, and yet here, in the 21st century, hikers still flee from rocks they claim are looking at them. So maybe the myths never left. They just stopped blinking. Eyes carved into stone. Vanishing climbers. Government silence. But if those cliffs see us, what else have they seen? As we close this journey, we ask the question that binds them all. What do these places want? In our final part, we will reflect on all 5 mysteries and what they reveal about the limits of science, the persistence of fear, and the dark beauty of the unexplained. Fire from stone. Towns made of radar. Whispers in the dirt. Screams beneath the ice. And eyes in the mountain that do not blink. Each story we have explored defies the rules we cling to. These are not just mysteries, they are ruptures in reality. Places that tear at the curtain we hang between ourselves and the unknown. They were not meant to be solved. They were meant to be witnessed. And maybe, just maybe, to change us. Let us step back. What ties these places together? They are all remote, far from crowds, cities, and noise. Monitored briefly, quietly, then silenced. Visually deceptive. Either invisible to the eye or falsely visible only to machines. Associated with loss of people, of data, of memory, and above all, they resist permanence. They appear, vanish, flicker, collapse, or scream just long enough to be felt but not proven. They want to be known. But only to a few, and when too many ask, they disappear. Because they ask questions we pretend not to need answers for. What if nature itself is aware of us? What if we have mapped the world but not the rules that govern it? What if reality can fracture and we are just standing near the cracks? These stories do not live in history books. They live in the margins. In ranger logs, lost footage, word-of-mouth whispers. They thrive on the edge of forgetting, and they echo because they reflect something deeply human. The fear that we are not alone, and the fear that we are. Psychologists might say these events are projections, reflections of our trauma, anxiety, and unprocessed grief. A cave that breathes like a wounded body, a town that exists only in memory like a childhood home now gone, a hole in the earth where people vanish like depression itself, a scream beneath the ice like voices we do not listen to, eyes in the rock like the feeling of being watched, even when alone. But even if these are metaphors, that does not make them unreal. Metaphors are how our minds translate truth. In a world of deepfake videos, disappearing metadata, and government files classified for 75 years, is it really so impossible to believe that some truths are hidden? Consider the Soviet Dyatlov Pass incident, 9 hikers dead, injuries that defied logic, and documents redacted for decades. The Tunguska explosion, 800 square miles of Siberian forest flattened. No crater, no explanation. The Taos hum in New Mexico, a low-frequency hum reported by hundreds, denied by officials. These are not ancient myths. They are recent. They are real. And they are just close enough to remind us that we know less than we think. There is power in mystery, not because it hides answers, but because it forces us to keep asking, to question the landscape, to listen to silence, to see the impossible, and still believe it matters. Because sometimes, the unknown is not a threat, it is a mirror. And when it stares back, it is asking, will you look deeper? Will you listen this time? Will you remember what you felt? Not everything can be explained, but everything can be felt. And maybe that is the point. Now it is your turn. Which story stayed with you? Was it the fire that emerged from cold granite? The invisible city that only machines can see? The pit that hums beneath your feet? The lake that screams beneath the ice? Or the eyes that blink from solid stone? Leave your theories, your fears, or even your own encounters in the comments below. Because somewhere, someone else has seen what you have seen, heard what you have heard, felt the same dread, and they are waiting to know they are not alone. You have just witnessed a marked mystery, a story not meant to scare you, but to wake you. Because sometimes, the forest remembers, the desert reflects, the mountain watches, and the ice listens. But only if we do too.